Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about Article 16. Now, Article 16 says, we reject the notion of using our military and our law enforcement agencies to take away our constitutional rights rather than to protect them. The foundation of our government was built upon the protection of our God-given rights. And all who take part in our government, our military, and the enforcement of our laws have to take an oath before God to first and foremost protect these rights. Here's the oath that I took when I enlisted in the Army. There are two important things I want to point out about this oath. First, this oath commits me to protect our rights from not only foreign enemies, but also from domestic enemies, which I believe present a much greater threat to our rights than any foreign threat. And second, the duty to protect our rights is first and most important duty. These oaths usually also include other duties dependent upon the position, such as the duty to follow the orders of the president, a governor, or a commanding officer, or to uphold state and local laws. But all these other duties are subordinate to the duty to defend the Constitution. Many people think that someone in the military or law enforcement's first duty is to obey the president or their commanding officer. But that isn't true. Their first duty is to defend our rights. So when our government, through ignorance or with intent to harm, attempt to subvert our rights, it becomes the responsibility of every citizen, but especially our military and our law enforcement, to protect these rights. This is the key difference between our country and a lot of others. Our military and law enforcement take an oath of allegiance to our principles and rights, not to a person or a position. Now today, all too often, many governments, including ours, seem to believe that they, not God, now have the authority to determine who receives these rights. Often using well-planned propaganda and crafty slogans, they declare that they must take your rights away to protect them. Some examples of this logic go like this. We need to take your freedom of speech away to protect your right to have a voice. Or, we need to take your guns away to protect you from violence. Now, failed logic like this doesn't make any sense. But if it's repeated often enough, it does often convince many people that they do have to take your rights away to protect them. But for those of us that aren't fooled, our rights have to be taken from us. And this can only be done by using the military and our law enforcement agencies. And as history has shown, the frequency and the level of this violence for this enforcement has the potential to increase. Now, here's something you may not know. Just in roughly the last century, the military and law enforcement of multiple countries, under the command of the government, exterminated over 100 million people that were citizens of their own country. That's right, 100 million. And in all these cases, these governments claimed they were protecting their people. Protecting them from what? Invading armies, murder, rape? Not those. Instead, protecting them from people who were committing crimes like believing that God grants their rights, not the government. Crimes like having beliefs and principles that differ from the government-approved beliefs. Sometimes just being a different race or religion can be a crime. And the punishment for these crimes is often death. But those 100 million didn't have to die because the government decreed it. They only died because the government was able to successfully use the military and the police to carry out this decree. And therein lies the key. Having military and law enforcement forces that understand their first duty and that won't carry out orders that violates the rights of the citizens in that country. But we've seen many countries' military and police fail their citizens. Oddly, the people in those countries all said the same thing right up until their untimely death. It may be the same thing that a lot of you are thinking right now, and that's it can't happen here. But it did happen. And if our military and our law enforcement fail to fulfill their oath, it can happen here also. But our job is to prevent it from happening here. Our job is to make sure we teach our children that God grants our rights, not the government. Our job is to make sure that everyone, but especially those that serve in our military and our law enforcement agencies, know that their primary oath of serving is to protect our God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, not to take them away. Our job is to work to get the right people in these roles. So if you or someone you know has the strength and character to protect our rights, consider a career in law enforcement. How about joining the military? I did it because it's also paramount to our success to have men and women in our armed forces that are committed to protecting our country and our rights. But our government often has other ideas as to what the purpose of our military is. So joining the military only to be sacrificed in their next war for profit scheme before you get a chance to fulfill your duty to protect our rights, that's a real risk that you have to evaluate before enlisting. And don't be fooled by propaganda that will portray our law enforcement or our military as criminals for choosing to do the right thing by protecting our rights rather than violating them. Because when these men and women don't follow orders that command them to violate our rights, that isn't a crime. Rather, it's their duty. The future of our country and our lives is dependent upon how well we and our military and law enforcement defend our rights. Now, I realize this is easier said than done. There's plenty of misinformation out there. We have people in leadership roles at every level of our government, our law enforcement, and our military that aren't committed to protecting our rights like we are. But if you aren't planning on being added to the list of 100 million exterminated already, it's work that we have to do. I'll see you next time.